Welcome, everybody. Crawl into your interior cave and listen to The Hermit
and his wife, where we talk spirituality, parenting, Catholicism, inside and out. Hey, you guys. Looks like I'm really leaning into you. Hi. We're trying something new because the sound has been a little messed up, so we're trying it with our AirPods on. I really hope the sound is better for you guys. We're out at our cabin, hence the different background. Good morning. Well, hey there.
Hi.
Are you awake?
Hi.
That's a real Minnesota accent.
Good morning.
You're not awake. You've only had one cup of coffee.
There's a thing, it's called the Midwest Translator. You can get. You can look it up on YouTube. Highly recommend
That
it.
was actually really accurate.
Yeah.
It's like the Minnesota goodbye. Like you say goodbye, but that means that you just trot out to the car with them. And then at the car, you talk for like 5 to 6 more minutes and make like meaningful overtures about wanting to include them and have them come back inside and they should come again. And then when they get in the car, there's like a lot of waving from the car.
Recipes for hot dish.
Hot dish. Oh, yeah. I mean, I have some relatives that have a little bit more of a Minnesota accent. Anyway, you're a Minnesotan now.
Well,
You have a Minnesota license?
License. Talk like one, I guess.
What's that called? License, driver's license? You do talk like one. Well, between Minnesota and Michigan, I think your Nebraska flat accent has been pretty bumped.
Yeah, we went to law school in Ann Arbor when Ave Maria Law School was up there. So I got the like Central Michigan thing going on too.
You really do.
It's very complicated.
What are we going to talk about with them today, Anthony? Is it accents?
It's
whole podcast
so
on
funny.
accents?
You always ask me what we're going to talk about today. I'm just along here. I'm along for the ride.
Oh, really?
Yeah, go
You're
for
just
it.
along for the ride.
I'm just along for the ride. Whatever you
What
want.
a ride our life is. I'm just along for the ride. Yeah, right. Well, I'm wearing my favorite sweater that does indeed have holes in the armpits. You got this from me a while back. It's very cozy. We today are going to talk about 11 years of marriage. So yesterday we celebrated 11 years of our family being a family on St. Joan of Arc's feast day, May 30th. We were married May 30th. When did we get married?
2009.
Oh my gosh, I couldn't do the math for a minute. I was like, wait, that would be
okay. That's why you didn't become an engineer.
Definitely
That's
have
fine.
no skills in that department. We're going to talk about 11 years of marriage. And in particular, advice that we would go back and give ourselves as newlyweds. Not just on the day of the wedding, but like that first whole year of things that we know now. Not just about each other, but about marriage in general. So this is, 11 years is nothing to sniff at, but it's also not like our friends who are celebrating like 15 and 20. Like, they probably have a lot better advice for you. I don't think they have podcasts, but I wish they did.
Well,
Because I would tune in.
yeah. There's a lot of marriage advice. There's a lot of things out there. It's just sort of a practical approach to things. We're still, we're still in the middle of it and everything. But something I'll put out there, not just for newlyweds, but people who are engaged or you're thinking about becoming engaged. If you're Catholic, in the old rite, there's actually a very beautiful blessing for engaged couples.
That's right.
And I highly recommend it because you're given particular graces, whatever your state of life is, you're given particular graces depending upon, whatever state you're in. So when you're engaged, you have particular, things you have to deal with and, you're trying to get ready for marriage, but you're actually trying to sanctify yourself while you're engaged as well. So it's not like it's not like the marriage, like everything is you're just waiting. Like
Right.
Try to sanctify yourself even while you're engaged. So anyway, there's a beautiful blessing. So you can ask, whatever priest, you can look it up online and see it, because I think that there are special graces. You're sort of consecrating that time to God, and you're asking for God's blessing upon it, and upon the person you're trying to grow closer with and anticipate a life together. So
What would they Google? What would they look up?
I would just type in maybe 1962 old rite blessing for engaged couples, or traditional blessing for engaged couples.
We had it. It's
Yeah.
really special.
Yeah, the same priest who witnessed our marriage vows, he he did that for us, which was really nice. In fact, you even wore a white dress.
I did. A dress that my brother had given me. One of those random gifts. He was like, I think you're this size. I bought this for you. I'm like, thanks, buddy.
It was a long shot. Came through.
I mean, he always comes through. He's a good brother. Something that's interesting you just said is that it's not like when you're engaged, you're just on pause until you get married. It's an actual season in and of itself. And just like newlyweds aren't just on pause until if and when they have a baby, those first weeks and days and months of being married, they are their own season. And when we live in anticipation of what's to come, we kind of miss out on what we're actually in at that time. Maybe that's one of our first pieces of advice would be to like live and actually be in the season that you're in as newlyweds.
Yeah,
and appreciate those days.
Yeah, that's a great point. Is that it's not static. You know, I mean, people's lives are never static, and that's true, even in the married life. Yeah, like, I mean, we were talking about so we've been coming out here to this to Nell's family's cabin for 10 years or so now, and we brought our first child right after he was born, for like a week or so, and so it's interesting to see him now when he's about 5 feet tall. But it was a really beautiful time because it was just us, and so yeah, focus on the time that wherever you are, whether it's you're newlywed or you just had a first child or maybe even a second child. I mean, there's always adjustments. That's the interesting thing. And we ourselves as people we're never static. I mean, we're either growing in particular areas or we're sort of struggling in other areas.
And or like, what's the opposite of growing? Like falling back downhill?
Backsliding.
We're backsliding. You're either growing or you're backsliding.
Yeah. No, that's good. Is identifying where you are in your married life and taking that time to utilize that because you're well, you don't get it back.
You don't get it back.
I guess.
And I think that we lived in a lot of anticipation. We got married and then we moved back what was home then out to Las Vegas where I had a job and you were studying for the bar, and I lived so much in anticipation knowing my job was up in August. We were coming back home. There was so much like, okay, when we get back to Minnesota, okay, and then I have to like renew my job search anew because I'm leaving my federal clerkship. I need to step into something that's next, like, and we're figuring out marriage, and you're gonna sit for the bar in July. Like, there was so much looking forward. So one of my pieces of advice to myself would be just enjoy that time we had out in Vegas, man. There were no family obligations. We weren't pregnant yet. We didn't have kiddos yet. We didn't own a home we had to take care of yet. Not rushing emotionally forward to what was to come, but to truly appreciate the Red Rock Mountains and nights at our like little apartment unit swimming pool and the simplicity of it instead of wanting to fast forward.
Yeah. Okay,
a second thing that I would talk about is actually get to know the person that you're married to. That's going to sound really crazy because you're going to think, I married you. Of course I know you. Hopefully you didn't marry a total stranger. But knowing someone before you get married and knowing someone after you get married, I found were two really different things. And part of that's because before you get married, you're still in like concentric circles in a way. Like, especially if you don't live together, especially if...
It's like a Venn diagram.
Yeah, you're like, oh, I have my life. I have my social scene. I have my apartment or my house. I have my rhythms and you have yours. And we're trying, like when you're dating, they certainly overlap. But your life is still your own. And when you get married, it's not that sounds really ominous. Your life is no longer your own. I don't mean it in a bad way, but your life is shared. So if they have a hobby that they love or like a sports team they want to watch, or you have friends you love to go with every week and it kind of impedes on actual time with your spouse, like to adjust to that and get to know, I can't just force my habits of life on you. We have to forge new habits of life together. It was weird though because we got married. We lived in the kind of a little bit of a social bubble just out in Vegas. We had my girlfriends that I'd work with out there and their spouses and boyfriends. And then when we moved back to Minnesota, you had a new job. I was looking for work. And we lived in a condo in downtown Minneapolis, but we didn't have friends from Minnesota. Yeah. So it was a really weird reset of like, what are our habits, our plans? That was the first time I knew that you cared about watching, what's the team name? The Huskers?
So it turns out that I
Football?
love
Baseball?
Nebraska football.
Didn't
even
know
though,
that.
Even though it's sort of been a long-suffering 20 years.
20 years of a bad team. I didn't even know that because we didn't have a
But,
TV in law school.
I wouldn't say bad, but
Oh,
you know,
okay, I'm sorry.
They've struggled as of late.
Struggling a little
Yeah,
bit.
but Nell didn't really know that, you know, because of
We
the Venn
lived
diagram
together.
thing. Like
I didn't have a
over
TV in my
here-
apartment in law school. I had no idea this was a thing. And I remember distinctly one night at our condo, we did have a TV. Did we have cable? Maybe? I don't know.
Yeah, I think so.
We had a TV in like our spare bedroom with cable, and you said something like, "Well, the game's on." And I said, "What? What game? There's a game?" And I think another time you went with your sister, maybe your brother-in-law, to like a bar to watch a football game. I
Yeah,
was pregnant and
Nebraska's-
throwing up, so I don't think I went with.
Joe Sensors in,
I mean,
in Bloomington.
And there we see.
They actually have a little pep band, you know, do the little song. It's
There's
great.
a song.
Well, yeah.
I mean, that's a tiny, it's like a simple example of me having to adjust and think like, oh, this is something you care about. I could care less about it. Now, maybe I'm not going to start caring ardently about it, but I'm certainly not going to say like, oh, I don't like that, so we're not doing that. Well, if you want to do it, we have to figure it out.
Yeah, I think the principle there is sort of becoming other centered because you're sharing your time is not, you know, I mean you're living in a shared space now. You're spending virtually all your time together, and so your daily rhythm has become one. So you have to sort of figure that out, you know, and even if you've been married for a while, you know, you're still trying to figure out like what works best, and you always have to be aware of the other person. So you become other centered and not.
I like that term, other centered.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I suppose you could still say self centered, and you know, like you're still focused on yourself, but that doesn't really work very well if you want to have.
No, it doesn't.
A happy married life.
Surprisingly, it doesn't.
Yeah. Well, to go off of that, like the other centeredness. So, you know, with human actions, our actions are always geared towards a particular end, and so it's always helpful when you're trying to figure things out. Is well, what's my end? What's my purpose here? So, to springboard off of your point of kind of becoming other focused and and being paying attention to the other person is. Together, and it doesn't really matter where you are in your married life, whether it's newly married, whether you've been in it for 5 years, 10 years, I suppose even 20 years, even though we're not there yet. But is the principle of household is you're sharing a common space together. So whether you have a house, an apartment, a condo, like whatever, you're sharing a common space together, and you have a common life together. So you are a household, and so you're trying to figure out how does our household run best. What are we trying to instill? Where are we going? And what virtues are we do we need to kind of work on and cultivate? And what kind of atmosphere do we want within our common daily life? And I'll put this out there too. One of the first times I like the concept of, we have our own household is there's a professor at Christendom College, John Cuddeback, Cuddeback. Dr. Cuddeback has he's got a great blog. I'll call it a blog website. I don't know. Website.
He's
I don't
amazing. We love him so much.
It used to be called Bacon from Acorns because he used to grow pigs on in Virginia, but now it's called Lifecraft. So if you look it up, but his whole thing is a philosophy of household, and he's a philosopher, and he looks at ancient Roman or Greek philosophers, and he takes the wisdom that's in there, and he sort of applies that to, well, what does that mean to run? What does it actually mean to run a household, and these different aspects of life. So you might consider looking at some of his stuff. He's got some great principles there and thoughts and so it's just. So I guess, the takeaway for, I don't know, this very long rambling point I'm trying to make here is that...
We love it when you have long points.
Well, I don't know. So you've got you and your spouse, your family, like your household. And so how best to run a household, and just trying to further that, given your daily struggles or whatever. But there's always a beauty to trying to transform even the dailiest, the simplest, most mundane things, and there's a joy that's there. And I think even especially now with the because we're still like dealing with the, I don't know,
Global pandemic.
the zaniness of the
New life that we're in.
yeah, it is. People are spending more time together, or more time at home because the other stuff just isn't available, like the different activities. So there is more of a focus, like the internal focus of your own family and even your own space. You're in your own space. So
And that looks different. I think that's interesting that you say, like, it looks different. To apply this principle of having a household that works well for your family is going to look different based on who's in your family and what your likes and dislikes are. For example, we don't have a television, and we watch like some things on Netflix. The kids are, big fans of Magic School Bus and like other specials and shows, but sports aren't a huge part of our households. That's not a part of our family culture. So even though back in those early days of marriage, you were really pumped to watch Nebraska football, that hasn't become a focal point. But baseball, of all things, has. So we have lots of radios in the house, and you and the kids will listen to the baseball game on the radio, and if there's a big game, you'll go watch it at, friends or my parents.
Like the playoffs or something, yeah.
Playoffs. But to say like, but other families we know, sports are a huge part, like my cousin. Sports are a huge part of his family. He and his sons especially love it, and it's not a bad thing. It's a beautiful thing because it's part of their family culture. So figuring out what's going to fit for your family, it's not going to look like your neighbors. Because guess what? We don't look like our neighbors. Like, we have different likes and dislikes than they do.
Yeah, I think it's being intentional about, being conscious and making a decision so that it's not just, everybody in the entire world has a TV, so therefore we're going to have a TV,
Or everyone always eats out, or they always go on a date night, or they always do happy hours, or they always appear to do these things. So we've gone out for happy hours. I don't even drink.
Nell struggles to finish even a cup of tea.
I'm just a loser.
Let's
face it.
No, it's you like the idea of tea.
It's very conceptual.
Yeah, which is fine. But again,
that model didn't fit for us. So when we go out with other young, newly married couples, we're going out for drinks, margs with the girls. I don't actually like margaritas. I like being with my girlfriends, but this version of camaraderie and version of community doesn't actually fit for me.
I love that point. I think that just from listening to what you're saying there, I think it's important for people. It takes a while to sort of grow into your own skin and not be afraid of who you are. Not in the sense of, if you've got vices or whatever, and you gotta work on that, But that's not what I'm saying. I guess what I'm saying is, if you know that you don't like margaritas, or you don't particularly care for that, it's okay. You don't have to change that. Or for me, I there are certain things that I like that other people don't necessarily like.
Like what? Now we want to know. Everyone's dying to know.
My version of a great night would be just reading up on the third floor. That's it. Maybe having some whiskey.
It's not like a night at the pool hall with 5 other people.
Yeah.
Does that sound like fun?
Yeah.
Maybe once in a while, but that's not what you're dying to do on a Friday night.
Yeah, but but it's okay to be who you are, and because going back to your point about when you're sort of dating, or you're getting to know somebody and you have this Venn diagram sort of thing, you're not spending time completely with the other person, so they don't see the fullness. You're not sharing the full rhythm of a day with the other person. So it sort of takes a while to grow in and say, oh, okay, you understand the other person, and you're not trying to force the other person to do something that they aren't, or that they really don't like, or whatever. So you sort of navigate together, understanding each other.
And that takes time.
Yeah.
I think I'm glad we did this. We really didn't do a ton of social stuff our first year of marriage. We just kind of stuck with each other. We moved back home at some point, so there were family things going on. That I was pregnant, I was really sick, so we certainly had a lot of help from family stuff. But we didn't stack up with seeing everybody. We just really tried to spend time, because it's only in spending time and slowly over time that you can get to know someone. I mean, I could have written down all my things to you and been like, these are all things I like and dislike. But when you started living with me, you saw things I didn't even know that were on my list. Like, you picked up on all of these things because you were paying attention. So paying attention to each other, I think, is another important premise of these early times when you're like paying attention. And knowing that your marriage isn't going to look like other people's marriages, you know, just like your wedding didn't look like other people, like that. It's good to have friends that are in a similar season, so you can, especially as a woman, to be like, oh my gosh, is this normal? I'm making this adjustment. Is this normal? To kind of bounce it off of each other. But just to be patient and know, like, your marriage has its own journey and it's going to look different. Maybe you will have no children. Maybe you will have 15 children. Maybe you will go through extreme financial hardship early on. Maybe you'll have great success in the workplace. Like, all of these things that we've watched our friends like navigating up and down, it looks different. And not to worry when yours doesn't look like other people's. I think that's a good thing to cling to.
Yeah.
All right, final thoughts.
Yeah.
Take it home.
Well, we're really trying to keep these a little bit shorter. That's
Trying
great.
to be honest. 20 minutes. For
Honest in
poor
20
listeners.
minutes. Yeah. Okay, so that's sort of on the human level. Just to, always keep in mind that, married life is it's also geared towards the spouses and the family sanctification. So you're always trying to help one another, strive for sanctification, regardless of what your circumstances are. And the spouses are there for one another, the good of the spouses. So you're really trying to partner with the other person in facing, whatever life, throws at you, whatever the difficulties are, but also seeing that, divine providence works in very interesting ways. And, but God knows what's best for you. He knows he's never going to give you a cross that's too heavy. But also, he's not necessarily going to give you the graces ahead of time, And so if you are facing particular challenges, whether it's in your marital relationship, whether it's with your job or, whatever it might be, like, God's going to give you the grace when you need it. So if you're facing particular challenges, don't give up. Like, you're going to be able to work through it but it also requires a humility. It requires humility with your spouse, realizing that you have we all have our weaknesses and
Not me.
and deficiencies.
I'm so replete with
Wow.
weaknesses.
11 years of marriage. Oh boy. But always keep in mind that you're there for, particularly, like, you're trying to get to heaven. You're trying to get your spouse to heaven. You're trying to get one another to heaven. You're trying to help your children get to heaven, so you can all praise God for all eternity together, which is a really beautiful thing. So that's
I would like to be in a different room from our children in heaven if they're being loud praising. Is that okay? Do you think God's going to give me my own house away from them?
Oh boy, yeah. Hi over there. Good to see ya.
They'll be adults by then, hopefully, God willing. I don't know. Are we all the same age in heaven? Gosh, those are questions for a different episode.
Yeah.
Thanks, Anthony. I cut you off like 3 times. I'm sorry. Finish your thought.
I don't know if I have any more thoughts. That's pretty much it. But for those of you who are celebrating marriage anniversaries, and you took the leap, however long ago it might be, congratulations to you, and keep going forward and persevere, and God will sustain you through whatever it is, and He's going to bless you with good times. So marriage is it's an incredible thing. So I guess maybe you've got some more, but I'll finish with a little. There's a little line from Pius XI's Casti Connubii, which is an encyclical from 1930s, 1940s. I don't even remember when he was pope.
Long ago.
We'll just say the earlier part of the 20th century. Anyway, paragraph 7, he says that the souls of spouses are bound and intertwined more closely together than even their bodies are.
That's beautiful.
And it's through the act of the will, by entering into this very particular relationship, that they have done that. So your souls are bound together to one another more closely even than your bodies, which is, it's such a beautiful thing. So you have a particular spiritual relationship with your spouse that is unique. It's not, it can't be replicated with anybody else. It can't be replicated, you know. Children's it's a close relationship with your children, but it's even different. So never forget that, you know, you and your spouse are your partners on a supernatural level that is it's something that's unique. So try to foster that together, and always look towards your end, and sort of instill principles within your own household that furthers your own sanctification, and try to stay other centered so that you focus on the other person. So, and don't be afraid to be who you are, because you're going to act best by not trying to be somebody or something that you're not. So
That was the best conclusion paragraph I've ever heard.
a lot of blah blah blah.
No, you wrapped it all up so beautifully.
Okay.
Happy 11 years, buddy.
Happy 11 years. We did it. Here we are.
I can't believe that you stuck with me this long.
Wow.
I definitely got the better spouse in my mind. You're pretty amazing.
Okay. Are we still recording?
We're still recording
We're still-
these poor
we're
people.
still here.
All right, friends. We'll see you next time.